Okay. Kitzur, the first ois on page 112. Iker Shechina b'tachteinim. Learn Bosi leGani yachesi kala. leGani ksiv kana leGani leGnuni lemakom shayikari betchila, the place which was my original place, that the ultimate place, the ultimate home of Shechina, and not only Shechina, Iker Shechina, which our Rebbe explains at great length in his first Maimer Tafshin Yud Aleph, Dafka down here, and we came to understand that when we learned Ois Daled of our Rebbe's first Maimer from Tafshin Yud Aleph. Yevar the Kavanas Briyus Eilemis explains that the intention of the creation of the world, Shia Dir B'Tachteinim, that there should be a Dir B'Tachteinim, a dwelling place in the lower realms. In other words, godliness should be revealed in this world, but that's not the ultimate taiva. The ultimate taiva is that should be done, v'naseh, that Dir B'Tachteinim is brought about al Yedei Iskafia v'Yishafcha, through the two different levels of Avodah, v'Iskafia, subduing the Yetzer Hara, v'Yishafcha, transforming it, subduing the Nefesh HaBahamis and transforming it. Shemaim Shikar Soivev, and that draws down, or HaSoivev. When you subdue the Sitra Achra, it brings about a revelation of the level of godliness that exists in all of the worlds equally, right? I.e., Sovev. Now, once we learned our Rebbe's first Maimer, or is Dalet of our Rebbe's first Maimer, we realize that really what you're bringing about, the revelation of godliness that you're bringing about in this world, is ultimately Kerech Atzmos. But Shazeo b'chulam and b'shaver, that's the level of light that exists in all of the worlds equally, and we hopefully understand that. And if someone would ask you about that, you could give them masholim from keches and nefesh, different powers of the soul that are clothed in the body, different powers of the soul that aren't clothed in the body but power the body equally, and therefore you could explain to that person sevev, which would be the mashal of sevev would be ratzon and tainug, will and pleasure, and mamale, sight, intellect, hearing, etc. And you could explain that to them very, very, very clearly. And if not, so do a review on the first chapter, and then you'll be able to explain it, because that's what we learned. That's what the Rebbe explains to us. Ois base, on page 114, was what we finished yesterday. Yivar, the Rebbe explains, Inyan HaKarbonis Ba'aveda. The whole Inyan of Karbonis Ba'aveda, but not why we bring Karbonis in the base of Mikdash, but how those Karbonis that we bring in the base of Mikdash are expressed in our day-to-day Aveda now, even when we don't bring Karbonis in the base of Mikdash. Be'ez Hashem, today we will. The Adam Ki Yakriv, that a person who wants to come close to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, Adam Ki Yakriv Mikem Korban Lavaya, a person who wants to come close to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, Mi Kem Korban, from you there should be a Korban. What's that Korban? Right, the Adam Ki Yakriv Mikem Korban Lavaya, a person who wants to come close to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, from you there should be a Korban from Hashem. Mina Behema, it should be from the Behema. You should sacrifice your Nefesh HaBahamis, elevate, illuminate, educate your Nefesh HaBahamis. So your Nefesh HaBahamis also comes to a state of love. How do we learn how to do that? We learn how to do that by virtue of how the Karbonis were brought on the base of Mikdash, on the Mizbech in the base of Mikdash in the times of Shlomo HaMelech, the first base of Mikdash, right? What was unique? What was the miracle that happened in the base of Mikdash at that time?
Fire from above.
Fire from above, right? There was a fire from above in the form of a lion that pounced on the Korban. It must have been quite exciting to watch. Right, so we would make a fire from below, and there was a fire from above. What does that fire from above represent in our Avodah? The fiery love of the Nefesh Elokis that comes from above and is clothed in us, meaning Avodah is not simply discipline. We've talked about that at length. Our service of the Eibishter is obviously without discipline, nothing works, right? Okay, but it's not just discipline. Well, that discipline that we discipline ourselves with, what's that all about? It's all about ultimately to tap into that aspect of you and I that is essentially godly. That's our Nefesh Elokis, right? So there's a fire from above. That's the Nefesh Elokis. There's a fire from below. That's the fire that you and I have to kindle through our Avodah below, of the fire of the Nefesh HaBahamis. Right? What's that? Eish shelamayla ve'eish milamata. And how do you do that? What's the line that we're all? Oh, I gave you all homework. I forgot to ask. Right? I forgot to ask. Amnon, why didn't you tell me to ask? Here you are standing there saying your morning brachas like a good little Jew, and you forgot to tell me what to do. Right? Okay, I asked you guys a question. What two words did the Rebbe use in Ois Aleph, It's not hard to remember all. I didn't have to remember. All I had to do was take some time in the 23 hours between the end of yesterday's shiur and the beginning of this shiur to look at our mimer, right? What two words describe Olam Atzilus? Because the question was asked yesterday. That Tzvi got us into this problem. It's all Tzvi's fault if you don't know the answer to the question. You can blame Tzvi. Not for not knowing the answer. You can blame yourself for not knowing the answer. You can blame Tzvi for the fact that you had to know the answer. No, two words. Don't say 10 spheres. Yes, there are 10 spheres in Atzilus. That's true.
Yesh mi'ayin?
You're guessing, or you looked it up in the mimer? You looked it up? So wait, Yesh mi'ayin happens where? We've talked about this. What's the yesh and what's the ayin? The yesh that comes out of the ayin. So what's the ayin and what's the yesh?
Yesh is the 10 spheres.
Yesh is created reality, and where's the beginning of created reality? What world? Created reality in Olam Atzilus. Should we go back to the beginning of the mimer and start again? So I guess we're gonna have to go back to the. Do you want to go back and do Ois Aleph again? There's some people who are complaining that they had learned this mimer before, and so why am I doing this to them? So here we can, now I'm asking you one of the most basic things that we learned in Ois Aleph, and I'm not picking on anybody. I've been picking on everybody for the last couple of days, and I feel bad. Right, so I went home and I picked on my wife. I got rid of it by picking on my wife, and so now I won't pick on you guys. But she can handle it. She's a big girl. She picks on me more than I pick on her. Believe me. So this is being filmed here. I'm in trouble. But she doesn't watch it. It's okay. We learned in the first parak, you have to do a review. If you don't do a review, then everything we learn will go in one ear and out the other, and it'll be as if you never know it. But these are things that you have to know. The Frierdiker Rebbe taught us the basics of reality. 4 worlds. We learned about the 4 worlds. And you just have to know what those 4 worlds are about. And if you don't know it, so then, can you be a good husband and a good father and help bring Mashiach? Yes. Right? Can you do as good a job if you did know something about God? No. And not knowing about the 4 worlds means I don't know anything about God. Because it's just Aleph based in Yiddishkeit. It really is in Chassidus. Right? 4 worlds. Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, Asiya. What's the difference between those 4 worlds? The difference between those 4 worlds is that Atzilus is a world of godliness, not creation, creator. Right? What's there? What's Atzilus the home address for? 10 spheres. That's where the 10 spheres come into a state of revelation in Olam Atzilus. Therefore, the 2 words that the Rebbe uses to describe Atzilus, look on page 112. Right? The 2 words that the Rebbe uses to describe Atzilus in the 3rd line of page 112, that's the page where the Rebbe explained all 4 worlds to us. Shem Daled Eilemis, Abiyah, Atzilus, Bri, Yetzir, Asiya. I'm in the 2nd line. Bezeh ha'or, Eina Kameshu, Batzilus, Kameshu, Babiyah. The light in Atzilus is not at all like the light in the 3 lower worlds. Atzilus, hu bebechinas, and here's the 2 words that I was hoping someone would tell me. Gilui hahelim, the revelation of that which was hidden. What was hidden? Those 10 powers of godliness that you and I call 10 spheres. Where was it hidden? It was encompassed and incorporated in infinite godly light. And in infinite, you don't see differentiation. It's all one. You don't see 10. Are the 10 spheres there? They're there. Those aspects of godliness are there, but they're all incorporated in a state of absolute oneness. So you can't see the differentiated expression of godliness in infinite light. Right? What happens in Olam Atzilus? Kelim, vessels that allow for the expression of the light in different ways and in different fashions. Right? So that in Olam Atzilus, there's a revelation of something called Chesed. There's a revelation of something called Gvura. There's a revelation of something called Tiferes. Do those levels of godliness exist in the infinite light, which is called Sovev above Atzilus? Absolutely, 100%. Right? Are they revealed there? No. Why not? differentiated reality, isn't revealed in infinite reality. Right? Okay, what's our mushal for that? Baruch Hashem, I have to reach out with my left hand today instead of my right hand because I'm sitting on the left. I'm not going to do this side. This side makes me nervous. Right? Okay. Oh, the little spaceman. I never noticed the little spaceman. Okay. Right? Why is this this is our mushal, not for Elam Atzilus, for what Kalim do. What do Kalim do? Kalim reveal finite reality. Right? Okay. The or in its essence is infinite. Light is, for all intents and purposes, infinite expression of godliness. But that light, by the time it reaches a place called Elam Atzilus, has been processed to the extent that it can reveal itself in what you and I would call relatively finite reality. 10 spheres. Well, 10 is sort of finite. Right? Now, does that mean those spheres are as finite as this piece of paper? Of course not. But relative to what's above them, are they a finite expression of godliness? Well, yeah, because there's 10 of them, so one ends and the other begins. Are they incorporated in each other, so ultimately they're in a state of absolute unity and oneness? Yes, because it's still godly reality and God's one. Okay, but there are 10 spheres in Elam Atzilus. Right? That's what's there. Right? 10 different expressions of godly reality. Okay, what's the mushal for that? Light out here. Physical light is a mushal for this. Light out here. We've done this 20 times. Light out here. Do I see any color in the light out here? No. Is there color in the light out here? Absolutely. How I mean, to say this sort of silly, but okay, how many different expressions of light exist in potential in the light out here? Infinite. Infinite amount of different expressions of light exist in the light out here. Is there any color in the light out here? Not that I see. Is this light full of color? Absolutely chock full of color, but all of that color is in a state of absolute unity, so you don't see any of it. What happens when it hits a kli? This thing reveals the blue in light. This thing reveals the yellow in light. Well, let's call this red. This thing reveals the red in light. How do I know there's red in light? Look. If there's no red in light, you wouldn't see red here. If we were in a laboratory and the person running the laboratory were to figure out how to stop all the red photons from reaching this book, right? Which you can do. I mean, they can do that, right? The physicists can figure out how to do that. They do it all the time. Okay, so he could block all the red photons. So the light that would be shining would only have blue and yellow photons and not red photons. What would this look like? Gray. Right? Why? Well, there's no red in the light that's out here. So how could this possibly express redness? Couldn't do it. The kli can only express what's in the light. There's no red in the light, so the kli can't express red. The kli is not the source of the red. The kli is simply a means of expressing the red. Right? Now, what happens with this thing? This is bluer than this is red. What happens to this thing? What in physics? What's actually happening? And the reason this happens in physics is so you and I can understand something about the Eibishter. Blue photon hits this, is reflected off this, and smashes into your eye at 186,000 miles per second. Right? That's why you wear glasses. It hurts less. Okay, fine. Right? What happens to all of the other infinite expressions of color that exist in this light here? They are absorbed by this. They are hidden by this. Okay, what's this doing? Absorbing all of it, so there's no color. What's this doing? I can do my beard, unfortunately. What's this doing? Reflecting all of the light, and therefore you don't see any color. Right? That's what's happening in physics, just physics, nothing, grade 8 physics. I don't know, grade 8, they don't teach physics in grade 8, but whatever, right? Okay, meaning the physics that even you and I can understand, right? The simple part of physics. Okay, that's what's going on. Right? So why did the Eibishter create the world that way? So you and I could understand something about the Eibishter and what happens in Olam Atzilus. In Olam Atzilus, there's a revelation of godly reality in 10. And what is it that allows godliness to be revealed in 10? 10 spheres. Right? Are the spheres themselves, though, the kalim in Atzilus are not created. They are godly. Therefore, what was our mushal for kalim in Atzilus? I give up. I give up. Okay, yeah. No, I give up. You guys don't take this seriously. I'm sorry. You learn things, you don't take it seriously. You don't write it down. You don't take it seriously. So if I ask you a mushal that we went through 5 times, and it's an amazing mushal, and it really helps us understand things, but you can't tell me the mushal, so then then I give up. I'm not going to say it again. Learn from someone else. Look in the old videos. Find an old video. Yeah.
With the 4 worlds, is it that they're separate or that they're superimposed on each other?
Well, they're not physical, but they're separate states of reality. You can't travel in a spaceship from one to the other, but they're completely different states of reality, such that Malchus, and now we can answer the question that was asked earlier, right? What Yesh Mi'ayin? Where does Yesh Mi'ayin happen? Olam Atzilus, which is a state of ayin relative to what's below it, meaning it's not something. Ayin means not. What is it not? It's not created reality. It's godly reality. And from that state of reality comes something called Yesh. Where does that happen? Malchus of Atzilus gives birth to Olam Habriya, to Chochmah of Briya. Write it down so you'll remember it. If you don't write it down, then I'll ask you in a week and you'll look at me with that look of sad puppy look, right? Write it down, right? How are you supposed to remember anything if you don't write it down, right? I'm sure that the doctor you go to, you hope that he remembers what he learned in medical school better than you remembered Ois Aleph of Bosi leGani. Because if he doesn't, he's going to, who knows what the heck he's going to do to you when you walk into that office. You know?
So, excuse me. So I guess leading from that, if let's say I was in a room and there was a rabbi and he was like beginning a meditation and he was ascending the world, would his physical body
No, his physical body's here.
Or would he be here?
No, his physical body's here. His conscious reality will be somewhere else. When Chesed walked into when the Rebbetzin got stuck in the elevator, they made an elevator in the Rebbe's house because the Rebbetzin broke her foot. So they made an elevator so she wouldn't have to walk up the stairs. So once she got, more than once, but she got stuck in the elevator. So they put a phone in the elevator because she got stuck once and she couldn't get in touch with anybody. So the second time that she got stuck in the elevator, there was a phone. So she called Chesed Halberstam, who passed away last week. She called Chesed Halberstam, who used to help the Rebbetzin. He was around all the time and used to take the Rebbetzin shopping, and he was just around and helped a tremendous amount. Very special Jew. So the Rebbetzin called Chesed and asked him. He had a key to the house, so asked him to please come and get her out of the elevator. So he came and he put his key in the door, but the Rebbetzin had put her key on the other side of the door and locked the door, so his key didn't work. So he went back home and he called the elevator, and he said, "I can't get in because the Rebbetzin put the key in the door, so I can't get in the house." So she said, "Okay, you can climb in the window because in the Rebbe's room, the window is always open." Now, the Rebbe's room is also her room, right? The window is always open. So you can climb in the room and come get me. She said, "Because I'm worried. I'm calling the Rebbe and he's not answering. So I'm worried." She was worried about the Rebbe. She wasn't worried. She'd get out of the elevator at some point. She wasn't worried about herself. So Chesed got a ladder and he climbed up and he put his head into the window and he looked up, and the Rebbe was sitting in a chair looking right at the window. So now here he is hanging, half of him is hanging out a window on the second floor, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe is sitting in his own bed, in the Lubavitcher Rebbe's bedroom, and looking at him. So he was rather, so he quickly got out of the window, climbed back down, called the Rebbetzin and said, "I climbed in the window. The Rebbe was there, sitting there looking at me, and he seems fine." She said, "Okay, when the Rebbe finishes, he'll get me out of here. Fine." So Chesed asked the Rebbetzin to please apologize to the Rebbe for climbing in the window and disturbing him. So the Rebbe had no idea whatsoever of what Chesed was talking about. He was not aware of the fact that he climbed in the window at all. The Rebbe was looking at him, but he wasn't looking at him. Why? Because the conscious reality of the Rebbe was not here in Elam Hazeh. The conscious reality of the Rebbe was somewhere else. The body of the Rebbe was sitting in a chair in Elam Hazeh. Right? We're learning, I'll tell you what, why am I telling you this story? Let me tell you a story about a Maimer Chassidus. Right? And I'll tell you the story and I'll be annoying. I apologize for being annoying. I know I'm being annoying, so that means you're being less annoying if you already know you're being annoying, right? Okay? And so I'm aware of how annoying the following statement is. But maybe if I tell you this story, you'll take learning Maimarim more seriously, that you'll actually think you're supposed to know it. Right? The Rebbe Rashab, the Chozrim of the Rebbe Rashab, the people who used to write down the Maimarim of the Rebbe Rashab used to say Maimarim Friday night. Our Rebbe said Maimarim Shabbos day generally, right, in the Farbrengen Shabbos day. The Rebbe Rashab would say Maimarim Friday night. And the Rebbe would say the Maimar. It's very interesting how the Rebbe Rashab would say Maimar. All of the Tamimim in the yeshiva would be sitting around in a circle. The Rebbe would be in a chair in the middle. The Frierdiker Rebbe would be in the middle of the circle opposite the Rebbe, and the Rebbe Rashab would be looking at his son, saying the Maimar. He's saying it to his son, the Frierdiker Rebbe. And then of course there would be people who would. This is also important to know. I heard this from Rav Nanas, who was one of the students in Tamchet Tamimim in those days, right? So he got there in Tafrei Shayin Gimel. He was there till Tafrei Shayin Hey. So that's what, 1913 till 1915. So Sunday morning in Chassidus, the Rebbe would say a Maimer Friday night. These are 15, 16, 17-year-old Bochrim. The Rebbe would say a Maimer Friday night. Sunday morning in Chassidus, the Bochrim had to know the Maimer off by heart. 2 days later, Sunday morning in Chassidus, they were tested by the Mashpia, knowing them, not word for word, but first the Rebbe asked this question, and then the Rebbe brought this Zoyar, and then the Rebbe explained things this way, and then the Rebbe showed that explanation perhaps is not quite sufficient enough, and then you have to know the Maimer off by heart. And how would they be tested? The Mashpia would say something, and then he'd look and he'd say, Menachem, say weiter. Then he'd say, okay, good. Then he'd say something else, and he'd look at Tzvi, go weiter. That's right. That means, now, how did they do that? I asked him how they did that, right? So he said, well, they'd stay up most Friday night going over the Maimer in groups, reminding each other what it was about and, putting the pieces together. Shabbos morning, they'd chazer the Maimer, and the Rebbe Rashab would actually walk around Zal, helping them chazer the Maimer Shabbos morning before davening. Rebbe Rashab would be walking around while they had chavrusas. And then Motzei Shabbos, they'd write it down. Motzei Shabbos, they write it down, and then they look at it, and they try to memorize it, and so then they were ready to go. They were ready to go Motzei Shabbos, Sunday morning. So that's how they ended up becoming who they were. So Stalin lost, and they won. So the Rebbe Shab said a Maimer, and the Chozrim came to the Rebbe with the printed, with the Maimer written. But the Rebbe looked at it. Printed Maimer, American Maimer. This happened with our Rebbe also. Right? So there were chayzim, there were people whose job it was after Shabbos. The Rebbe said a Maimer on Shabbos. A Maimer during the week that was recorded was obviously not a problem. But the Shabbos Maimer, which were most of the Maimer, the Rebbe said were in Farbrengens on Shabbos. So then the people would have to Motzei Shabbos sit down and remember everything the Rebbe said. And there were people who did that. Rav Yoel was one of them. Simon Jacobson and his brother Yossi Jacobson, they were both very young, but they were part of the group of people who would write down the Rebbe's Maimer. Then they'd send it into the Rebbe. If the Rebbe wanted to edit the Maimer later, so then it would come out as an edited Maimer, but at least the Rebbe would look and see what they wrote and said, okay, yes, you can print that and send that out, that's okay. But that would be called Bilti Muka. That wasn't edited, but the Rebbe would look at it, make sure that what they wrote down is what the Rebbe said. So they brought a Maimer to the Rebbe Rashab. And they showed the Rebbe the Maimer. This is all answering Gabi's question. Right? I showed the Rebbe the Maimer, and the Rebbe looked and said, but I didn't say this, and I didn't say this. I said something else. So the Chayzim said, yeah, but the Rebbe quoted 2 psukim in Tanakh. And so the Rebbe didn't quote them verbatim. The Rebbe said something like those 2 psukim in Tanakh, but the Rebbe didn't quote them verbatim. So we just wrote down the psukim verbatim. We wrote down what the psukim say as opposed to a paraphrase of the psukim. The Rebbe Shab said to them, and I heard this from Rafichi Eifen, who is an immaculate source of information. Okay, so that's why you can believe this story. Right? The Rebbe Shab said to them, that's not what I heard in Gan Eden. Write what I said. Where's the Rebbe when he's saying a Maimer to us? Where's his conscious reality? Gan Eden. What are you and I hearing? The words are coming out of a mouth in Eilam Hazeh. The Rebbe sitting in a chair in Eilam Hazeh. You ever see a video of our Rebbe saying a Maimer? You've seen lots of videos of the Rebbe saying sichas. What's interesting about the Rebbe saying a sicha? Right? The Rebbe's looking at you, looking around the room, eyes are open. If the Rebbe's sitting when he's saying a sicha, sometimes you'll see the Rebbe standing because the Rebbe will be saying a sicha after he finished davening. A lot of the later sichas were said standing. But if you've seen a video of an old Farbrengen, so the Rebbe's sitting, the Rebbe's hands are on top of the table. The Rebbe's always moving his hands. It's very interesting, right? His hands are moving all the time. Right? And the Rebbe's looking around and saying a sicha. His eyes are open. You ever see a video of the Rebbe saying a Maimer? The hands are under the table. Can't see the Rebbe's hands. Right? The Rebbe's eyes are closed, and he's saying a Maimer. And what does the Rebbe do after? Now, none of us saw this, but there's one video where you can see. Maybe there's more, but there's one video where I've seen it. Because generally, for Brengens, you couldn't see it because it would happen under the table. Right? But there is a video from Erev Shavuos, Tafshin Mem Tes. The Rebbe said a Maimer standing up in 770, which was very unusual. And the Rebbe wasn't saying Maimarim at that point. And the Rebbe said 2 Maimarim that year, one Pesach and one before Pesach and one before Shavuos. And that Maimer before Shavuos, so the Rebbe is standing and the angle of the camera on the pillar in 770 is looking at a 45-degree angle. So what you see when the Rebbe finishes talking is, again, something I never saw. The only people who ever see it are the people sitting behind the Rebbe, who were 100 years old. You can see the Rebbe take the handkerchief off his hand from the angle. So the Rebbe was asked why he had a handkerchief on his hand when he would say a Maimer. Now, this is the Lubavitcher Rebbe. This is not some person who wants to be spiritual, lives in California. Right? The Rebbe said, in order to maintain a connection to this world, he wraps a handkerchief around his hand. Because where is his conscious reality? Not in this world, somewhere else. A higher level of reality. That's where the Maimer is coming from. The Rebbe Shab said, Gan Eden. I assume Gan Eden Elyon, which is an Eilam Abriya. Gan Eden Tachtein, lower Gan Eden, is an Eilam Yetzira. When a soul leaves this body down here in Eilam Hazeh, it goes to a place called Gan Eden. Most souls go to a place called Gan Eden Tachtein, which is Eilam Yetzira, which is a place of incredibly beautiful revelation. I'm not going to ask what mushal we gave for this kli of Eilam Yetzira, right? Because I don't want to cry while I'm davening, right? Okay, but we gave a mushal for Yetzira, we gave a mushal for Bria, we gave a mushal for Atzilis, and we gave a mushal for Eilam Asiyah, right? The mushal for Eilam Asiyah is probably still on the table. Where is? Oh no, it's not there.
I think it's there.
Right. Gershen's cup. Okay, Beseder. So that's where the Maimer comes from. So that's also, what does it mean if a person is experiencing a higher level? That means that their conscious reality is on a higher level. Where's their body? Still down here? Right? Different worlds, different levels of existence. Are there metaphysical worlds? Yes, there's metaphysical worlds. There's 2 metaphysical, well, really 3, but 2 metaphysical worlds. One's called Eilam Abriya, one's called Eilam Yetzira. What happened? What's in those worlds? Trees and daffodils? No trees and daffodils. What's in Eilam Abriya? Angels. Chayas and Eifanei Akedesh, the 2 highest levels of angels are in those worlds. Right? What's in Eilam Yetzira? 8 more levels of angels. What else is there? Souls. Souls are there, right? After a soul leaves Eilam Hazeh, it goes to a place called Gan Eden. What Gan Eden Elyon is in Eilam Abriya. Gan Eden Tachtein is in Eilam Yetzira. These are places that exist. Can you take a plane there? You can't take a plane there. right? Are there people who go there and come back? Well, yeah. And now are there people? Yeah, there's probably a few people who can do it. Right? Is that what you should be spending your time worrying about? No. You should spend your time worrying about remembering everything you learn in Chassidus, remembering everything you learn in Gemara, learning lots of halacha so you can know how to navigate Eilam Hazeh as a good Jew. Worrying about elevating yourself through meditations, that's nice, but it's probably just for your own spiritual kick and has very little to do with God. Right? So I'd worry about what God wants. What does God want? There's 613 mitzvahs you have to take care of. That's what God wants. Right? Does he want you to experience godliness? Yes. Now, that's what you should be working on right now. Honestly, if you would ask me, I'd say no. But I'm not, there's people who can disagree with me. That's allowed. Right? I'm not, right? But what should we be doing? Learning lots of halacha, learning lots of Chassidus, and figuring out how to learn a page of Gemara myself. Not someone else teaching me. So I'll learn it myself. Right? You want to watch a video of someone riding a bicycle? Fine, you can watch a video of someone riding a bicycle. What will you never learn? How to ride a bicycle. Right? The only way to learn how to ride a bicycle, get on, fall off, get on, fall off, get on, fall off, until you get on and you stop falling off. And then you know how to ride a bicycle. That's the only way to do it. All the other shortcuts don't work. Right? Put training wheels on the bicycle, you don't learn how to ride a bicycle. As a matter of fact, it might even hurt, right? Because the next time you get on the bicycle without the training wheels, you think you can ride a bicycle like this, right? Because usually that's how they work with training wheels, right? So you keep falling over. But at least you're getting skinned on the same elbow and the same leg every time. So your right side is healthy. Your left side looks like Shrek. You're all bruised up, but okay. The Seder. Okay. That was the answer to Gabi's question. 4 worlds, that's what we learned about in the first ice. Right? You want to do review, so learn it again. You want to hear they're on this, they're here. Right? So I thought we did this for people who aren't here. That rabbi who came to visit us on Thursday, I think? Thursday. It's Thursday or Sunday? Sunday? So he's a mashpia in Olei Torah. So he said something quite surprising to me. He said, well, I watch your YouTube videos all the time. Now I get to see you in 3D. I said, come on, what are you talking about? He said, well, I was teaching a mimer that you were teaching. I wanted to see what you had to say. I was interested, so I watched it. And I've watched it since. I watched a whole bunch of stuff since. Okay. I was quite shocked. Okay, Baruch Hashem. So the office made us do this. Okay, say to Baruch Hashem. I'm glad they made it do it. And there's 9 or 10 of you guys who used to learn here, who now have jobs in America, who listen to this every day on their way to work. So Baruch Hashem, it's worth it. Even though I hate having this picture of me in front of me all day, it's very annoying. Right, that's why I wish that Mayanot would put cameras up there for every class here. It's ridiculous for any yeshiva today to not have a camera in every classroom and put every classroom online so the millions of Jews who aren't sitting in yeshiva have unlimited access to Talmud Torah. I just don't understand why with the technology that we have that's not happening everywhere. But okay. No, it doesn't make sense. There's millions of Jews who could just watch all sorts of every language, Portuguese, Spanish, English, Hebrew, everything, right? American, every language you could teach. You could teach. That was for you, God. Every language you could teach. Right? Hungarian, right? Well, right? I don't know why not. Right? Parsi, right? Had a discussion at the Shabbos table 10 days ago as to who's going to be the first shaliach in Tehran. when it falls, so someone's got to go.
David Timori was here, so he said that he's preparing himself.
Who?
David Timori.
Timori can go to Sweden. Let him go to Sweden. Right. Okay, no, let's go. Okay, so Aleph. Base, what did we learn? We learned how to elevate our nefesh habahamis. How do we do that? And then we got sidetracked. How did we end up where we just ended up? We ended up where we just ended up because I asked you to answer the question that I asked you yesterday as homework. So we had to go back to the first chapter. And what is, again, we just said it. So now you can tell me now, what are the two words that describe Eilam Atzilus? Gilui Hahelim, the revelation of what was heretofore hidden. How is it hidden? The same way all these colors are hidden in the light out here. They're all here, but they're hidden in this light. So too, this would be, so to speak, a mashal for Or Seivev, and this would be a mashal for Atzilus. What's revealed? 10 spheres. Right? The light, what was hidden here, comes into a state of revelation in Eilam Atzilus. Is it a created world? Absolutely not. It's a world of godliness. What was the mashal for the Kalim of Atzilus?
Transmit cup?
A what?
A transmit cup?
A what?
Transmit cup?
No, that was Eilam Abriya.
Ice cup.
Ice cup, thank you. Oh, I feel so much better. An ice cup. What's ice? H2O. What's water? H2O. It's all the same. The Kli in Eilam Atzilus is godly. It's not created. It's the Eibishter. It's Kadosh Baruch Hu. Right? Okay. Beautiful. Well done. Okay? Yesh Mi'ayin happens when Eilam Atzilus gives birth to Eilam Abriya. Technically, Malchus of Atzilus, because the Malchus of every world is the repository of all of the light of that world and the source of the next level. Malchus is femininity, the repository of certain energy that then produces birth. It's Malchus. How do we, second chapter, how do we come to a point where we elevate our Nefesh B'Amis? So there's a line there that we said it would be a good idea to remember. Mizbeinen b'izbeinenus Eloki shegam a-Nefesh B'Amis yochel lasigu. At least underline that line in your mind. To contemplate godly contemplation, page 114. Sixth line. Right? Mizbeinen b'izbeinenus Eloki the gam a-Nefesh B'Amis yochel lasigu. To contemplate godly ideas in a way that also the Nefesh B'Amis can understand it. Nefesh B'Amis means human intellect. Right? Think about God, learn about God in a way that human intellect can understand it. Well, okay, learn Chassidus. Right? Again, we talked about this when we learned it. Learning Zohar, is that good? Amazing, incredible. Does it affect your conscious reality? Not in the least. Why? Because I don't understand what I'm reading. If I do understand what I'm reading, so then obviously that's great. But you just say over Zohar. Is that holy? Yes. Does it have some effect on me? Residual. Yes, has some residual effect on me. It connects me to holiness. Does it affect my conscious reality? No, because I don't know what I'm reading. How can it possibly affect my conscious reality? I don't know what the words mean. Now, that doesn't mean I by definition, no one knows what the words mean. There are all sorts of people who know what the words mean. But I'm saying just saying over Zohar. Right? Whereas if you sit and learn a Maimer Chassidus and understand it, or sit and learn a Zohar and understand it, what will happen? So then those ideas will resonate in your conscious reality and will become part of the prism through which you see everything that happens to you and everything you experience. Through that prism of that godly reality. And then life's different. It's just different. And Nefesh B'Amis will be interested in doing positive stuff. Yivar inyan karbonas b'avodah. The Adam ki yakriv tzarich liyes mikem korban. That's to be from you a korban. Eish shelamai leish milamata. There's a fire from above. That's the love of the Nefesh Elokis, and a fire from below. The love of the Nefesh B'Amis. That's the next words. The Rebbe says Ava the Nefesh Elokis, and Nefesh B'Amis. The love of the Nefesh Elokis, Nefesh B'Amis. Ava Nefesh B'Amis. The love of the Nefesh B'Amis. How do we get the Nefesh B'Amis to love God? V'yahavta es Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha b'shnei yitzrecha. Rashi on Chumash, based on the Sifra, which we saw at the top of the page. Ba al yedei. How does that happen? Hislavshus, the clothing of the Nefesh Elokis in the Nefesh B'Amis. And how do you do that? Well, that's what the Rebbe said. He's baining. Think about it. Contemplate godliness. So then the Nefesh B'Amis becomes a kli to reveal the Nefesh Elokis. Okay. Ois Gimel. We have 15 minutes. Ubezeh Yuvan Masha Mishkan Hay. Oh, Gemara class. Okay, I meant to mention this. I have just a blood test, nothing serious, but it's at 9:50 in the morning in a clinic about a 10-minute walk away from here. So if I'm a little late for Gemara, it just means I was waiting there in line. But I'll be back, hopefully 10:30. But if I'm a little late, I'm around. Okay, but I have to go.
No class.
What? That's why I don't have a cup of coffee next to me right now. There's some test that evidently, I think it's 2 or 3 hours. You're not allowed to have coffee before. So
you have coffee after?
I'll have coffee after, whatever. In the meantime, I'm still alive. There's nothing to Baruch Hashem, right? But I'll go get one of Gabi's coffees after when I come back from my blood, right? Now the coffee's because of something else, some breath test. I don't know, whatever. Ubezeh Yuva. From this, it's understood. Masha Mishkan Hayam Yatzei Shitim. Remember, we saw this yesterday. I hope you found it interesting. We learned those interesting things about Shitim wood. It really is fascinating, that whole thing that Moshe uncovered about Shitim wood, right? Atzei Shitim. For some strange reason, we'll see why in Pneumius, when the Torah discusses the wood used to build the Mishkan, it does not call it cedar, which is what we know it was. How do we know it was? Well, because of the Medrash that says Yaakov Avinu brought cedar trees from Eretz Yisrael down, cedar saplings, down to Mitzrayim, and we planted them. And then when we left, we cut them all down, and we took. Imagine we're schlepping these. How much wood we needed to schlep? It's unbelievable. But we schlepped all this wood out into the desert because we knew we were going to have to build a Mishkan. But the Torah calls it Atzei Shitim. There are places where the Torah refers to the Mishkan as a place of Erez, cedar. So, but the question arises, why, when we're told in Parshas Truma what to take, we're told to take Atzei Shitim? Why not just say cedar? It was cedar wood. Why say Atzei Shitim? So that's what the Rebbe is going to explain in Pneumius. Yuvan says, Mishkan Hayami Atzei Shitim Dafka. It was from this Shitim wood. The liyos she'ikar aveda b'mishkan u'mikdash. That since the ikar aveda, the essential aveda, in the Mishkan and in the Mikdash, both Mishkan in the desert and the Mikdash in, the Mishkan also moved around until it made it to Yerushalayim, and in Yerushalayim it became the Mikdash. What's the Mishkan all about? Lishavcha, to transform, chashucha, darkness, lenahar, to light. The most powerful expression of transforming physical reality into godly reality. Mishkan. Here's a physical objects in physical space that produce a revelation of godliness. Mamish. Shezeu inyan avedus karbonis canal. This is the notion of karbonis, as we said earlier, elevating the animal to a higher level. Ubefrat, and particularly, the Rebbe says parenthetically, Maisa Keteres, the highest level of service in the Beis HaMikdash was Dafka, the incense offering, the Keteres. The word korban comes from the root to come close. The word Keteres comes from the word ketira. Ketira is a kesher, a bond, meaning you can one, tied with the Eibishter, not simply close to, but bound up with. What's unique about Keteris? So one of the things that Chassidus explains about Keteris is that the Eibishter gets from our korbanos in general, but Keteris specifically a reich nichoyach, a pleasant fragrance. What's unique about the power of smell? The power of smell that you and I have is a very unique power, to the extent that it's the only power that you and I have that wasn't polluted by Chet Eitzadas. Chava heard about it, she saw it, she touched it, she tasted it. Nowhere does it say anything about the power of smell involved in that Avera. So that's why that power of ours is a very, very important power and very powerfully connected to the essence of our being. That's why if a person is passed out, what might be a way of waking them up? Smelling salts. If you shine a light and they don't get up, or you call their name and they don't get up, so then you might try smelling salts. Now, sometimes the light will work. It depends how deeply they're out. Right? Va'al yedei ha'aveda shebamikdash, through the aveda shebamikdash, hine, al yedei zeh, as a result of this, he'ir gilui elokus ba'elam, it shines a revelation of godliness in the world. V'lochein haya, and therefore it was mi'atzei shitim. Therefore it was built from atzei shitim. Why? Right? What's the mikdash all about? Illuminating the world with godly light. Therefore it had to be built from atzei shitim. What in the world is the connection of those two things? Dehine, shita, the word shita. Now, the word shita, you know that word, right? You talk about someone's shita, someone's position in a particular discussion. Okay. So that tak is the root of the word, because what does the word shita mean? Dehine, shita, perish nitiyah. Shita means to lean to one side or the other. Now, if you're talking about a particular discussion or an argument, so then the person's shita will be to lean to one side or the other in that discussion. Hainu, sheyesh davar shehu emtzai. There's something that's in the middle. There's a middle ground. Va'ataya le'zatzad, and leaning to either side, lamaila above or lamata or below, nikra shita. That's called shita. That's shita. V'chein, similarly, and this is the word that's going to carry us through chapter 3, 4, and 5. The whole rest of the Maimer is going to discuss this word at length. V'chein perish shtus. What shtus? Folly. It's a shaita. Shaita is someone who is an idiot, someone who acts in a less than rational way. V'chein perish shtus. What shtus? The shtus hu ha'ataya, it's leaning away, turning away, miha yediyah v'chokhmah, from knowledge and wisdom. So the person's acting in a shtuti way. They're not acting in a reasonable way. Diyadiyah v'saga, that knowledge and comprehension, hu derech hamitzua, that's, so to speak, the middle road, the middle ground. V'ataya mizeh, and turning away from this, nikra shtus. So acting in a way that's irrational is called shtus. Yeah? Okay, that's right. So now what's that got to do with the Mishkan? We don't know. We'll find out at great length in the 5th chapter. But first the Rebbe says a line. Vehine, yesh shtus de le'umazeh. There is shtus of the other side. There's negative shtus. Shtus of klipa. Okay, that line, what does that seem to indicate? There is shtus of klipa. There's also shtus of kedusha. Clearly, if we say shtus is klipa, that means there's just shtus is klipa. If you say there is shtus of klipa, well, that means there's shtus that's not klipa. As a matter of fact, exactly what Gershon said. There's going to be something called shtus to kedusha. That's the 5th chapter, shtus to kedusha. Right. In the meantime, the Rebbe is going to explain in the 3rd chapter shtus to klipa, in the 4th chapter. An explanation of how our neshama works and how that shtus affects our neshama or doesn't. And in the 5th chapter, the Rebbe is going to explain. Those are the 5 chapters we're learning in this Maimer. We know the Maimer is 20 chapters long, right? But that's 4 different Maimarim, each 5 chapters. We're only learning the first. The 5th chapter, the Rebbe will explain shtus to kedusha. Hine yesh shtus to lumazeh ukemesha kosov. What's an example of that in the Torah? Ki tiste ishtei. His wife acted. Now, the word is pronounced tiste, and it's talking about the isha soita. Who's the isha soita? The suspected adulteress. Right? She's suspected of acting in an improper way with a man not her husband. So she's going through a whole process, etc., etc. Okay. Now, the way you spell the word, and if you look at the Masechta in Shas, it's spelled with a samach. Now, in the Torah, it's spelled with a sin. Why? To teach us that really, what's the source of this behavior of hers? Ki tiste ishtei, tishte. What do we learn? What did Chazal learn from that pasuk? Upeidush Rashi. Rashi explains, ki tiste ishtei. Rashi says, tat. Tat miloshin natiyah. She turned away from. She leaned away midarkei tznius, from ways of tznius. I mean, she definitely wasn't acting in a tzenua way. Whether or not she did the avera with this person is unclear. Hopefully, she didn't, and that'll all come to be revealed by virtue of the whole story of the Saita. But she definitely was acting in an improper way, being seen in compromising positions with a person who's not her husband. So she was acting in a non-modest way, no question about that. Okay, And so what does Rashi say? Why does it say ki tiste? She turned away. Meaning Rashi's learning it as titishte. Same word. She leaned away from the ways of modesty. Uksiv. There's also a place where not such good things happened to the Jewish people. V'yeshiv Yisrael b'shitim. We dwelt in a place called Shittim. What happened in Shittim? The whole story with Baal Pa'or and Bilam coming to, sending the daughters of Midian, and it produced the whole story of Pinchas. That was all Shittim. Shuhu inyan hashtus delu'umazeh. Both of these places in Chumash are an expression of negative shtus. U'kemaimer Chazal, very, very famous statement of Chazal. Ein adam eved aveda, a person doesn't do an aveda, elim kein nichnas bei ruach shtus, unless it enters into him a spirit of folly. In other words, every avera is temporary insanity. Let's see why the Rebbe says that. Right? Let's see what Chazal said that. The Rebbe's going to explain it. But ruach hazeh, this spirit, it's not a spirit like Casper the Friendly Ghost, right? It's just some reality. Mechasa ala emes, covers the truth. I mean, a person becomes unaware of the truth temporarily. Ruach shtus, ruach aklipa, v'sitra achra. It's like a klipa, like a shell. What does a shell do? Hides what's in it. Sitra achra, the other side. V'nikra shtus, it's called shtus al derech melech zoken uksil, like the old feeble king. He's a ksil, he's an idiot, and the ksil is also translated as idiot. Right? Now, why are we calling the Yetzer Hara an idiot? Because it seems to be pretty smart, certainly tricks us a lot. Seems to be pretty clever. V'heima mechasim al ora gilui. This is a state of reality that mechaseh, covers light and revelation. De'elukus hu emes v'chayim. Godliness is truth and life. K'moshe Kosev. And if you didn't know that, so the Rebbe brings a pasuk. Havaya Elokim emes hu Elokim chayim. The Eibusher is true. The Eibusher is life. Varuach shtus. What's this spirit of folly that might overcome a person temporarily? Hopefully temporarily. Mechasa ala emes, hides the emes. V'chayas Eloki, and the godly vitality. And a person loses sensitivity to truth and loses sensitivity to godliness, which are one and the same. And therefore they might act in a way that's contrary to the truth. That's called ruach shtus. V'lochein nikra b'shem klipa. Therefore it's called klipa. Why? What's a klipa? A shell. Ukamei klipa. Shemachasa ala pri, like the klipa that covers up the fruit. The klipa can be a shell. It can be a peel. It's covering up the fruit. Cain, so too, haruach shtus, the spirit of folly. Mechase umailim umastir, it covers and conceals and hides al ur the gilu elukus, the light of the revelation of godliness. I mean, the ruach shtus is that which causes a person to, and again, if you in the context of how the Rebbe is explaining it, it's temporary, causes a person to temporarily lose sight of the truth and therefore make a decision and act in such a way that's contrary to the truth. Now, what does the Rebbe mean? Let's see. Now the Rebbe says something very interesting. V'zeu asiba. This is the reason. Masha efshar shar adam yochol liyos. This is the reason that a person's able liyos to be chas v'shalom over aveda. That's why a person can do an aveda. A person do an aveda. If somebody would ask you why do people do avedas, everybody gives the same answer. Why does a person do an aveda? Yetzer Hara. Yetzer Hara. Oh, that answers everything. Yetzer Hara. Okay, well, but it doesn't answer everything if you think about it. Because I have a Yetzer Hara. Okay, so that's why I walk into traffic in an interstate, 6 lanes of traffic going 70 miles an hour east. I just walk into it. Why? Do I have a Yetzer Hara? Do I do that? Of course not. Why? Because I'm not nuts, right? That's crazy. Why would anybody do that? Okay. So then why does my Yetzer Hara cause me to do things that I might objectively think aren't a normal thing to do? Because let's do a quick survey. We're going to go 3 minutes over. A quick survey. Right? Does God exist? think we'll probably, the reason we got up early in the morning is we probably think that the answer to that question is yes, right? Did he create the world? Assume we'd all answer, if we did, we'd probably all answer yes, right? Okay. Did he take us out of Egypt? Yeah. He split the Red Sea. Yeah. Did he give us the Torah on Har Sinai? Yeah. I think we'd all agree with that. Right? Is everything in the Torah true? I think, okay, now we might be working towards coming to that realization, but basically we'll say, okay, yeah, if you're going to ask me in a survey, I'll say yes. In the little green box at the bottom of the page, I'll say yes. Okay, fine, good. Right? Our Chazal and the Rishonim, and therefore Shulchan Aruch, a true representation of that truth that exists in the Torah. Yeah, I think so. Right? Am I obligated to do all of those things that are written in Shulchan Aruch as a result of learning the Torah through Torah Shebal Peh and coming to a halacha conclusion as to what it is that I'm supposed to do? Am I obligated to do all those things? Right? Am I allowed to not do those things? Well, okay, according to Torah, no. Right? Okay. Do I sometimes not do those things? Yes. Okay. So now that last answer contradicted every single answer that you and I said to every single question that we were asked. Which doesn't make sense, right? Objectively, we had an understanding as to what reality is. But for some reason, subjectively, I might not live in line with that objective appreciation. That's called Ruach Shtus. For whatever reason, I lose sight of that particular reality. Temporarily. Hopefully temporarily, right? If I lose sight of it completely, I probably stop answering the other questions the way we were answering the questions, right? Okay, but as long as I answer all of those questions in the beginning, the way we all answered them, so then the idea of doing an Aveira doesn't make any sense. That's exactly what the Rebbe is asking. What do you mean, why do I do it? Because I have a Yetzer Hara. So what I have a Yetzer Hara? What difference does it make? Is walking into traffic at rush hour, it might not be a problem because the cars aren't moving. Is walking into traffic at 11 in the morning in an interstate in Florida, is walking into that traffic with your eyes closed a good idea? I think we'll all say no. That's probably not a good idea, right? Do I walk into traffic with my eyes closed at 11 a.m.? No. Why not? Well, I just told you it's not a good idea. Right? If I'm 2 years old, might I? Yes. Plus a show, right? Because the 2-year-old's not very smart and he hasn't figured out that this is not a good thing to do. Okay, but at some point he's going to learn relatively quickly that that's not a good idea. Okay. So we don't do that. So I have Yetzer Hara. So I have Yetzer Hara. I don't understand. So what? I'm not going to do it. So why do I do Aveiros? Because if you would ask me objectively, is an Aveira a good idea? I'll tell you no, an Aveira is not a good idea. And I'll do it anyway. So now the Rebbe, and we'll stop here and we'll see tomorrow morning. But the Rebbe is now going to explain something really quite fascinating. So why is it that we do that? Now, of course, what's most fascinating when the Rebbeim explain this to us is they don't do it. But they're going to explain to us why we do. But they don't. Right? But they're still the best place to figure out why we do. Because they even understand that objectively. You and I might find all sorts of subjective reasons to rationalize it. Well, that's exactly what Ruach Shtus is, right? Ruach Shtus is that I will temporarily rationalize this behavior, and therefore, because I have to rationalize it. If I don't rationalize it, I won't do it because that's the way humans work. Right? I have to convince myself it's okay. So how do I do that? I know it's not okay. I might have just learned that Sif in Shulchan Aruch yesterday, right? And today, whatever. So how does that work? Why does it work that way? Okay, as opposed to just saying the very superficial answer. Oh, we have a Yetzer Hara. So I have a Yetzer Hara, Asma. I have a Yetzer Hara. But the Yetzer Hara doesn't make me do crazy. It doesn't make me jump off buildings to see if I can fly. Right? I have a Yetzer Hara to fly. I don't jump off buildings. We'll see tomorrow how it works. The Siddur is going to teach us why we do Averas. What a fun thing. No.